So if you have any questions, hold them to the end or put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. Without further ado, I think we're going to turn it over to Dan to introduce his neighbor, Christie.
Well, welcome to everyone to this afternoon's talk. My name is Dan Lozier. I'm on the events committee of the Palisades Village. So I make it my duty to keep my eyes and ears open for good speakers that can make interesting presentations to the group. And I think I've succeeded today. The speaker today is Christie Davis. Christie is going to be talking about the Renwick Gallery and its 50th anniversary celebration, which took place earlier this year. Christie is an expert on every aspect of arts administration. For more than 20 years, she's been heavily involved in managing curatorial and collection activities at major museums. And she has also been involved in fundraising activities and grants management, and in public programming and community outreach. She has collaborated with visual and literary artists from around the world, and these have resulted in a series of successful programs. Currently, she serves as the major gifts officer at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. Now, the Renwick Gallery, the subject of today's talk, is a branch of the American Art Museum, and its 50th anniversary was held this year. Christie's presentation today will discuss that event, and during that time, she will show lots of colorful images of the art that was shown and the people that were there during the celebration. Christie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. So thank you for having me today. I am speaking to you from the Palisades, where I also live. I'm working from home today, but when I'm not at home, I work, as Dan mentioned, at the Smithsonian American Art Museum downtown, and we also run the Renwick Gallery. So I'm just wondering who has been to the Renwick before? Yeah. And how about the American Art Museum, which shares its building? I know it's a little confusing with the National Portrait Gallery. All right, great. Well, it's nice. I have already told Dan this, but I grew up in California in the part of the city called Pacific Palisades. So I grew up in the Palisades, and here I'm moved to Washington and I'm back in the Palisades again. So it's really nice to be a part of this group. And I look forward to learning more about the wonderful things that you do together as I continue to run into Dan while we're walking our dogs. So I'll get started. I'm going to share my screen and just go over what our, let's see, agenda is. So let's see. Okay, so as we discussed, we'll be talking about the Renwick Gallery, its 50th anniversary, which is this year. And the title of the exhibition that we created for the 50th is called This Present Moment, and this is actually a work of art in the show. For the agenda, I'll just do a little overview. I have a great video that I'm going to show you. It's just about 7 minutes long that we created specifically for the Renwick's 50th anniversary. We hadn't done any sort of new information about the Renwick since we did a big renovation in 2015, so we were due for a little update. Then I'll go over the 50th anniversary campaign highlights. I'll share some of the activities that we've been up to in this year and a few things that are coming ahead, including some new acquisitions, as well as upcoming Renwick exhibitions. If you can believe it, we are planned out all the way until 2026. And then there's a program that I can share that'll be next year that you could all join online if you're interested, and we'll do some closing remarks. So let's see. Okay, I'll run the film first. Hang on. Okay. Let's see. Okay, can everyone see? All right, I'll push play.
Christie, I'm not getting the audio.
You're not.
Mm-mm.
I'm getting the audio. How do I do that?
Sometimes you need to go reshare or share that screen when you flip between the screens.
Okay, let me try it again.
You see Christie, the woman on the screen?
Hang on. Sorry, if that won't work, I can certainly tell you what it was about. Oh dear. I seem to be having some connection issues. Okay, how about if I send you the video and you can share it with everyone?
Sure.
Okay, great. I'll just go ahead and launch into the presentation then. The video itself lives on our website, so it's always there. So let's go ahead and do.
The background looked beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Okay, can you see this now?
No,
No. Hang on.
Erica, we can't hear you.
We tested this in advance and jinxed ourselves.
Oh, no.
Let me just pull it up again. I'm so sorry.
It's happened to all of us.
Christie's having problems too.
Give me just a minute here.
Oh, okay.
There it is. Okay.
How big is that message?
There we go.
Okay, good.
Oh, no.
Okay, let's get this show on the road. Can everyone see?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, I already went over the agenda. So I'll just give you a little bit of an update. So the museum celebrated its 50th anniversary this year, 2022. So it opened in 1972. We have some amazing pictures of the opening. If you can imagine, back in 1972, you got to smoke cigarettes in the exhibition and have cocktails, and a little bit of a different world. But we were looking to the next 50 years. And as I mentioned earlier, in 2015, we did a major renovation of the building. So a lot of times when you celebrate an anniversary, you're looking for a large capital campaign in museums to make a big difference looking forward. So we were not in need of doing any sort of a major renovation, but what we did need was to build up the collection of the museum, as well as put some money aside to support exhibitions. So for this campaign, we identified the following goals. We wanted to acquire at least 100 significant craft objects for the collection. We wanted to celebrate the 50th anniversary with an exhibition and raise funds for that purpose. We wanted to have a party to celebrate with the public this 50th anniversary. And we also wanted to raise support, as I mentioned, for future Renwick exhibitions and acquisition support. And one of the things that we did in this process is we put together an acquisition committee, which was made up of volunteers from around the United States, people who were craft collectors, artists, advisors, and we asked them if they'd help us out, and then we asked them if they'd introduce us to their friends who would help us out, and so on. It was a little bit like a game of telephone, if you will. And in the end, we ended up with about 30 people who regularly met with us to help guide us in this campaign. We had people from all regions of the United States, from the Pacific Northwest to the Southeast, from Maine down to Florida, Chicago to Santa Fe, and we had many of our friends were just right here in the Washington area. So we started the campaign in 2019. At the end, 2020, we were making plans to go visit people, make collection visits, and of course the pandemic hit us. So we had to come up with a creative way of coming around this challenge. And one of the things that we started to do is exactly what we're doing with you today, is by Zoom, FaceTime, etc. We asked people we identified works in the collection that we were interested in acquiring. And then we said, do you know anyone who has this? Or for instance, you collect baskets. What baskets do you have? And we ended up with amazing gifts to the collection from literally people's homes. You can see here some of the examples. One thing that may or may not be obvious is that traditionally craft comes as either fiber art, ceramic, works made out of wood, or glass. Here's some of the other examples of some beautiful pieces that we brought into the collection. Very literally, some of these pieces were in people's bedrooms, living rooms, and they very generously offered them to us for the Renwick, what we like to call a gift to the nation. Here are some of the other examples. We also had a few gifts that were made in honor of departed artists from the artists' spouses, families, children. It's a really lovely way for us to commemorate them and again, have their work be a part of this story. In addition, we raised funds. So essentially the curators made a shopping list and identified artists that they really wanted to have in the collection. And then we were able to have donors get behind, sometimes writing just a check that they said, you can apply this however you like. And sometimes it was very specifically getting behind an artist that they loved, that they wanted to see in the collection. That is the case, for instance, to the piece on the right. Those are from the De La Torre brothers from California. The donor was very interested in having them represented in the collection. The same thing with the gray work with the yellow. That's an artist named Jiha Moon. And the donors that supported that acquisition have some of her work themselves, and we're excited to have her included in the collection of the Smithsonian. Here are some of the other examples. Again, you can see we acquired quilts, baskets, weavings. The piece on the upper left-hand corner, if you can believe it, is made out of garbage, and it is meant to be a piece of jewelry, if you will, like the train on a wedding dress. There's a hook. The artist wants you to hook your finger in and drag it around the room with you. What she is also making a comment about, though, is the garbage that we leave in our path. Everything on there is made out of plastic, and will be here a lot longer than any of us are. With this acquisition campaign, we ended up with an exhibition. As I mentioned, it was called This Present Moment, Crafting a Better World. It's open right now. It opened on May 13th, and it's open until April 2nd of 2023. We did a beautiful catalog, and the printers wonderfully were able to come up with this way of printing it so that I think it's over 50 of the covers are never the same. There's some way that the printing press can keep altering the combination of colors so that the books turn out slightly unique. Here's some images from the exhibition after it opened. It's a show that really gets people talking, engaged, taking pictures. Here's some more images. You can see on the upper right-hand side, those beautiful ceramic pieces. They're taller or as tall as the artist. If you can see the image in the back, that's actually the artist walking on her property in Hawaii. And she made these pots, sometimes larger than she was. The curator for the exhibition, while we were all home during the pandemic, she was inspired by a quote from Victor Hugo's Hunchback of Notre Dame, in that for Quasimodo, the church, Notre Dame, was his egg, his nest, his nation, and his universe. And that's how she organized the show. So those vessels on the upper right are actually in the egg section. The curator also shared that while she was formulating the show, she read a book called something like Everything You Need to Know About Birds. And she learned that ducks, when they're about to hatch, because they don't stay in a nest, they fall into line, start to peck their shells and tell each other so that they can have an orchestrated sort of communal hatching. And it reminded her of these works, and that the artist would write little notes and attach them to stones or pieces of clay and throw them in the pots before she fired them. So each one has almost like a little marble that rolls around if you move it, that has like sort of a secret wish from the artist. To thank the donors to the exhibition and the collection, as well as the artists, we had a fantastic gala. This was, still in COVID. A lot of people hadn't been out, hadn't been to parties, but people dusted off their black tie and joined us for a really marvelous party. It was great to get dressed up after being in our sweatpants for a long time. We have a phenomenal special events team. Every time we do an event, they come up with a concept for the colors, the lighting, how the tables are set, etc. They do a really wonderful job. So you can see that the staircase has this lit title on it, and they sort of created this rainbow effect with lighting. We had music, we had a sit-down dinner. On the lower right-hand side is our director, Stephanie Stebish. We also had a public party opening. This was a ticketed event. We had several hundred people attend this event. And again, a great turnout. We had music, we had food, we had drinks, we had dancing. We had hot dogs to go as you left the event. We had sort of like circus performers. It was a great party. And again, many of the artists, I think there's 120 probably artists in the exhibition. And I would say probably at least 75 of them came for the opening from all over the United States. So the campaign was a big success. We're happy to share. We raised over $5 million altogether. We had 68 people or households make gifts from their home of artworks to the Renwick. We raised close to $3 million for new acquisitions. So that's work that we've already purchased and we still have some saved that we can use as we move forward. We had 33 individuals make financial contributions to support the exhibition and programming. A little over $2 million that we were able to use to support Renwick exhibitions. And we had our goal, if you'll remember, of acquiring 100 objects. We actually acquired over 200. If you can imagine, we said no quite a bit. We probably could have ended up with 400 had we said yes to everything. But the bar's pretty high to get an artwork into the collection of the Smithsonian. One of the goals for this collection campaign was to diversify the collection. We had the majority of the works in the collection were by men, so acquiring work by women artists was a very big priority for the campaign. And as you can see, we also were able to purchase work by more diverse artists. Our goal, of course, is to reflect the US population in terms of our percentages reflected in the artists that we present. We've been doing a lot of programming around the 50th anniversary. And again, everything that we do is on our website and on our YouTube channel. So these programs are there for you to see. We have a library, if you will, of recordings. We had this potter, Roberto Lugo. He's an amazing potter from Philadelphia. He came in person and gave a lecture on September 14th. We had what we call our director circle. That's a membership where we had a conversation with Consuela Jimenez Underwood that was in the Renwick. No. We've had some virtual programs. We've been doing these. They're very popular where we go into an artist studio and they walk us around. Again, these are things that you can tune into. The next one's on December 8th with Katie Hudnell. It's nice again for us with these artists that live in different parts of the United States. Another project that we're really excited about, this is something that's been ongoing at the American Art Museum, but we have a partnership with the Ringling College of Art and Design in Florida to create these stories that are really comics featuring artists in our collection. And we have focused again on women's artists, and they've added a couple of them from this recent campaign to the variety that they already have. We had a great review in the Washington Post, as well as several other periodicals. And we're excited to say that one of the curators who contributed an essay to the exhibition received an award from the American Craft Council. She is a Native American curator and is now actually at the National Museum of the American Indian. But one of the things she's been helping us with is in acquiring works by Native American artists. That's been another priority. You can see the image on the lower right. That's actually made out of buffalo horn. It's decorated with a monarch butterfly design, and the artists are commemorating the annual migration of monarch butterflies that fly through and land on their reservation in South Dakota every year. We're continuing to make some new acquisitions. As I mentioned, this is an incredible piece, nearly life-size, by an artist named Christina Cordova. It's actually her daughter. She is of Puerto Rican descent and wanted to celebrate that culture. So it's her daughter holding a bunch of plantains. Here's some other work that we've acquired since the exhibition opened. As I mentioned, we have a lot more work that we acquired than we were able to do in the show that's currently up. So when that show closes, we'll be changing out some of the objects to include some of these new things that you see here. We also are acquiring craft jewelry, and these are an example of some of the pieces that have recently come into the collection. We're also in the process of acquiring an amazing African-American story quilt collection by Dr. Carolyn Maslumi. She herself is an artist as well as a collector, and she's working with us to place her collection permanently in the Smithsonian's collection. So lots of, if you will, we're filling up our treasure chests for future exhibitions. So as I mentioned, the exhibition will be open until next April. And then when it closes, we have already planned an exhibition called Sharing Honors and Burdens. It's the Renwick Invitational's 2023 exhibition. It will feature all Native American artists and will include new commissions. So it's a wonderful opportunity to highlight emerging or sort of under-celebrated artists, and we provide some financial support to them to create new work. And then after the exhibition, we will purchase at least one work from each artist. It's going to be great when the show opens in May. You can see the costume on the right-hand side. The artists are actually going to dance in, they themselves, it's two sisters, are going to wear the garments and dance them into the exhibition and provide a blessing of the space before they hand the work over to be exhibited in the show. We'll have another exhibition in 2024 of women fiber artists called Subversive Skilled Sublime. And we're also working on an exhibition. This is a piece that's actually in the exhibition. It's amazing quilt. I think it's probably about 12 feet long by 8 feet high. It's massive. It's currently in the exhibition by an artist named Bisa Butler. These are the Harlem Hellfighters who were in World War I. They are recognized African-American soldiers. She made this incredible quilt that we commissioned for this exhibition, and we will be in the future having just a solo exhibition of her work. It's quite extraordinary. This is not painted. This is all fabric. The way that she's able to create the depth of expression in their faces, she uses in those parts sheer pieces, and she layers upon layers upon layers to create this depth to really bring out the exact replica of what these brave men look like. This is sort of a fun one. We are coming up on the semi-quincentennial, so the 250th birthday of the United States. The Smithsonian asked all of us, all the museums in the Smithsonian, what will you do to celebrate the nation's 250th anniversary? And the curators were charged with coming up with fun ideas that they would do based on our collection. So our Renwick curator, Mary Savage, came up with this fantastic idea to celebrate state fairs, the craft of state fairs across the United States. Craft traditions have a long history of activity in state fairs, and so they're literally already on the road. This is a picture of them at the Texas State Fair. And they are looking at basketry, at weaving, saddles, butter sculpture. Has anyone ever heard of butter sculptures before? So our registrars, those are the ones that have to ship things and keep the bugs out of the museums, are a little nervous about the butter coming in, but we're going to come up with some refrigerated, airtight options, but it'll be a fun show. And in 2027, we'll have a show that's focusing on Hispanic or Latinx craft makers. The piece on the left is something that we're bringing into the collection. It's by a Mexican American artist, and it's his riff on the painting American Gothic, if you've seen that before, the farmer with his daughter. As I mentioned, on May 3rd, we'll have a special program, which will be sort of wrapping up the 50th anniversary. We're going to have a symposium here in Washington at the American Art Museum. It will be free. If you want to come down to the museum, you're welcome to join us for this program in person. It will also be live broadcast on our website. Again, we're recording everything. There's just a wonderful archive in place for watching programming at the American Art Museum as well as the Renwick. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
This is so exciting.
Yeah.
Carolyn?
It's a lot of information.
You want to start us off with the questions?
Well, I have actually have 3 questions, but they're all related. First of all, thank you. The artwork that you have shown is just absolutely spectacular. So I'm really wondering, from concept to completion, how long did it take the staff to prepare for the collection campaign?
That's a great question. So, you know, we knew when you have an anniversary coming, you know it's coming. And as I showed you, the curators have to plan very far in advance. I mean, we're already talking about shows for 2027, but this was sort of a real challenge in that she was curating an exhibition, but she didn't know what she was going to have. Because we had things sort of coming in through the door. I think our cutoff was December 2021. So just last December, and that in part was based on our catalog publication deadlines, because we have to photograph everything for the catalog. But I would say, you know, really in earnest, about 1.5 years to put the show together. I think her organizing idea of, you know, from the Hunchback of Notre Dame really helped her, because, you know, things would come in, all the baskets, for instance, went into the nest section. The nation works were things, or the homeworks were, you know, we literally have some craft furniture. Actually, we have a piece that came from the bedroom of one of our board members, and they normally keep their socks in it. But because you know, she was able to think about home. We have a beautiful writing desk that's made out of marquetry that she was able to include. We have a punch bowl, a communal punch bowl that she was able to include. But she gets a lot of credit, because what often takes a curator, you know, sometimes seven years really to plan, she pulled together in about 1.5 years.
Wow. And did you have a role in that in terms of major gifts?
Yes, that's nice of you to ask. This was my project, so it's not so interesting to everybody, but the way that fundraising works in the museum and the Smithsonian and other places, is there are people like myself who work with individuals and foundations to solicit gifts, really, both financial gifts and collection gifts that help support our mission and our goals. And so this was my assignment. I worked with the curators hand in hand, and I got to be sort of the good cop, bad cop, and that I was asking for connections to collectors, and I was the one that had to do all the cold calling to see what they had. And they, if they were offering us stuff, sometimes it wasn't always great. And, we have to say no. And so the curators would say, okay, Christie, you're the one that has to tell them no, So yeah, I got to work on this really closely. It was a lot of fun. I have in the past curated exhibitions myself, but it was great. I'll tell you something. When we first brought the acquisition committee together, we had asked them all for a financial gift also, just to participate and to show their buy-in to being a part of the process. And almost all of them said no. They said, no, I'll consider giving you something from the collection, but I'm not willing. I don't want to consider a financial gift right now. And I will tell you, by the end of our year and a half together, just about every single one of them made a financial contribution, sometimes quite generously, to support this. So, it's about what we do. What I get to do is about building relationships and friendships, and helping people like yourselves see their own role about how they can make a difference. So it's pretty rewarding.
I said I had 3 questions. My last
Okay.
question is, I'm probably jumping on somebody else's question, is, but do you get to go to some of these marvelous parties?
Yes, I do. I sure do. I got to wear a full-length dress, and it was really fun. Yeah, I'm always the one, when my boss doesn't want to go to a party, she says, do you want to go to this thing for me? I always say, yes, I'll go. So yes, it was a lot of fun.
I bet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
of course, sure.
Does anyone else have a question?
I have a question.
Please.
I was wondering, how do you store all the items that you do not display, and what percentage of the total collection can you display in the museum at any one time?
Mm.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have altogether, just in the Smithsonian American Art, and that includes the Renwick's collection, we have 48,000 works of art. 48,000. So I would say at any given time, less than 10% are on view. And that's between the 2 buildings. We have 170 objects on view in this particular exhibition. We brought in over 200, and we'll probably have, by the time we're done with this year and closing out things, we'll get another 50. So yeah, a very small percentage. On the one hand, that's good for the objects, because if they're kept in storage, they are safe, they're not exposed to the elements, light, etc. But we do pride ourselves on sharing our collection, both within the Smithsonian. We loan work all the time, and at any given time, we have, I don't know, 5 exhibitions that are touring across the United States, as well as several individual works that are on loan for other museum exhibitions. There are a few storage facilities that the Smithsonian owns in the area. Our particular unit is in Maryland. So offsite, we don't store anything at the museum itself. We try to maximize all that space for exhibiting art. In fact, at the American Art Museum, the staff doesn't even work in the museum. We're down the street in an office building so that we have more room to show artwork. So it's an ongoing challenge. We are running out of storage, and we need to find more.
I have a question,
Mm-hmm.
a little off the wall. I'm wondering if you have ever found it a hindrance that you're not located on the mall. There always seems to be a clamor every time we've got new ideas for, well, actually, I know there's a long list of folks who would like museums that focus on a particular group or topic, and everybody always wants them on the mall. And now we've got the Women's History Museum and the Museum of the Latino, both clamoring to be on the mall. And we all know what happened with the Holocaust Museum. You know, they ended up just off the mall, and then they tore down the Queen Anne building that was there. I'm just wondering what's going to happen, because there have been a couple of, Phil Kennicott just did a big article, very persuasive, about let's extend the mall. So I'm just wondering, because I know you're right there at the White House, but do you ever feel like you're overlooked, or that it's not, you know, it's a hindrance, you're not on the mall?
No, I mean, I'll tell you, it's interesting. We can get a different audience. I would say that people end up at the Renwick on purpose instead of accidentally, which might be more likely at the mall. But we have a tremendous amount of traffic. We do have then that spillover from people coming to see the White House, which is literally across the street. So that's a great benefit. It's a little interesting sharing the street with the Secret Service. I can tell you that. They have to be actually quite intimately involved in all of our shipping. When we have a party, we have to let them know, you know, arranging for our valet parking, et cetera. There's a lot of negotiation. We have more security. For instance, we do bag checks at the Renwick, which we do not do at the American Art Museum because of heightened security measures. But the Renwick has a tremendous attendance. And I can tell you the American Art Museum, which is also not on the mall, one of the ways that we have tried to distinguish ourselves from the museums that are on the mall is our hours are different. So we're actually open from 11:30 in the morning to 7 p.m. We are in a very vibrant office building and restaurant district, as well as the arena. So we get, I mean, at 6:45 at night, the museum's quite full, actually, because there's so much activity of people being in that part of town. So yeah, but that's a great question.
Well, I guess I have another question too, and that is, it seems like the Renwick went through an identity evolution or something a few years ago with that. Absolutely. And I think it was right after you did a renovation, you had those amazing installations, you know, so it wasn't just an exhibit, it was actual installations, one per room. And then after that, you did Burning Man, which was extraordinary. I mean, I had never seen anything like that at the Renwick before. Would you say that that's right? That it was sort of an adjustment in identity or something?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that the curators have talked about is that, you know, the moment that many of us recognize or remember is the studio craft movement, which really had its moment in the 1970s when, in fact, the museum opened. And one of the things that the curators over the years have been trying to do is to refresh that concept of craft, and the dialogue and the definition is much broader than it used to be. There are a lot of artists that you know are equally considered contemporary artists. So, but that interest, you know, we really did actively take an interest in some opportunities for exhibiting what we would call like an immersive experience. So, you know, a whole gallery filled with one thing. And we're continuing to do that. So it's been exciting. It, you know, it opens up the parameters, and but absolutely when the museum underwent that massive renovation in 2015, it was also like, okay, well, we just did this beautiful facelift. We're not going to just open with the same old exhibition.
Dan, we can't hear you. Dan,
I didn't know I had turned my microphone off. I wanted to ask about the building itself. It's a magnificent building, of course, and much older than 50 years. Could you say something about when it was built and who built it and so on?
Yes, I will. And I apologize with the video not working. That part was covered in that. But the building actually is the first purpose-built museum in the United States. So it's not the first museum. However, it is the first building that was built for the reason of being a museum. And it was built by William Corcoran. Construction started before the Civil War, and it was meant to house his permanent collection, his ever-growing collection. He hired the architect James Renwick, who did St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, as well as the Castle building that we identify with the main Smithsonian building on the mall. And they made a trip to Paris to see what was at the time a new addition to the Louvre. So this is, the building is built in what is called a Second Empire architecture. It has a nice dialogue with the executive building across the street. Corcoran, when the war was over, quickly outgrew the space. So it wasn't his space for long before he started building down the street what we remember as the Renwick Gallery, in a more Beaux-Arts style of architecture. And the federal government took over the building. They purchased it from him. It was a court for many years. And I think during the war, the Union cavalry was based there. And they weren't really taking care of the building. And by the 1960s, quite literally, it was falling apart. Chunks of it were falling down. They were set to tear the building down, and Jackie Kennedy caught wind of it and recognized, for one, the French inspiration in the architecture. And so she got behind the movement to preserve the building. So at that point, it was became a part of the Smithsonian, and a major renovation underwent a major renovation to get it back in shape, and it opened in 1972 to the public as the Smithsonian's Craft Museum.
how many employees does the Renwick have?
Not that many. So again, technically, we are all under the directorship of the American Art Museum. So there are, but at the Renwick, there are two curators, Nora Atkinson and Mary Sabig, and they have, I think, two people that assist them, curatorial assistants. And then there's somebody whose main job is to work on exhibits there and look after the building. Other staff come from the main building for installing exhibitions, etc. And then, of course, we have a fantastic security force, but just a handful, actually.
Wow.
Altogether, at the American Art Museum, I think we're around 130 employees. One thing that I continue to find amazing, the Smithsonian overall has over 6,000 employees. So whenever I meet somebody and they say, oh, I have a friend that works at the Smithsonian, do you know such and such? I have to say, well, no, there's 6,449 others of us. So.
Do we have any other questions?
I've got one. Can you hear me? Thank you, Chris.
Yes.
Really interesting.
Sure.
I can't wait to get over there to see some of these new objects. I was just
Please
wondering,
do, and we're open 7 days a week. Again, we're back to our 364 days a year.
great, and very smart shifting of hours that you mentioned. I was just wondering, because you're under the American Art Museum, do you not collect things outside of North America? Are you restricted?
Great question. So we are distinctly within both collections. We consider ourselves an American collection. However, you know, what does it mean to be an American? That's something that we welcome a loose interpretation of. So we have many artists who were not born in the United States, and that in fact goes back, I mean, overall our collection spans I think about 400 years. So, you know, if you were an artist who has spent the majority of your life here, if you went to school here and stayed here, if you were born here, but you moved somewhere else, our interpretation of that is, you know, fairly broad and generous, but we do have to have some sort of significant narrative connection to the United States, yeah.
And one more kind of nitpicky question that maybe
Mm-hmm.
only I have. What does WT in parentheses mean?
Oh, sorry, that was just, it's a working title.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Working title. Well, we I can share something with you. The curators, you know, often think of a title for a show. I mean, it's their baby, if you will. They're working on it, but we do work with our public information team. They're really the ones that decide what things ultimately are called, and oftentimes we'll come up with 1, 2, or 3 titles, and they might even do you know, a little focus group, like what sounds best, what's communicating the best way. So sometimes the actual titles aren't decided until you know, like a year before the show's going to open, which is confusing because we share files, and sometimes it starts out as one name and then it changes, and you're looking for something and you have to remind yourself about what it was called before. So
Thanks.
sure. Well, I'll show you one more picture. You asked if I got to go to the parties, and I did get to go to the party, and I'll show you.
Oh,
There's my picture. So,
Wow.
beautiful picture.
yeah.
Oh, that is wonderful.
Yeah. It was fun. My dress had pockets, that was just the point. I could put my phone in there because of course I couldn't have a purse with me all night. I was running up and down the stairs and trying to figure things out, but the pockets came in very handy for, you know, an extra place seating name tag and my phone and a pen if I needed it, or a business card, etc. But it was a really, really fun night.
Oh, beautiful picture.
Thank you.
It is beautiful, yeah.
Can I ask one more really silly question?
Sure.
I've been going to the Renwick for years. I love it. I guess it's probably one of my favorite museums in Washington. And I work just down the street, so I could go there if I was on my way to a meeting or something. I would stop in. Anyway, and I love the renovation. But one thing that I missed was that, do you remember they had that huge red round chair at the very top of the stairs?
Yeah.
And I just remember sitting there with my kids sometimes, and that's the only thing I miss about the renovation. I wonder what happened to that.
You know, that's a good question. When I mentioned when the museum opened in 1972, there are pictures of people sitting on that piece. And they had ferns and, you know, all of that. I don't know where it went. Right now in the Grand Salon, we have the Janet Eckelman piece installed, which was originally a part of the Wonder Show we talked about earlier. And so it's on the ceiling, and there is a specially commissioned carpet on the floor, and it's not
Okay.
uncommon. We encourage people, so instead of sitting, you can come sit on the floor and, or lie down and
Yeah,
look
no, I
up.
remember that. I did
Um,
that.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'll have to ask the curators where that great piece went.
I hope it didn't die someplace in some dump.
Yeah. I
No.
mean, one of the concepts for when the museum opened in 1972 by the then curator, he wanted it to be like America's living room. He wanted it to be a living room across the street from the White House that you could come and sit down and make yourself comfortable and look at art. So
It was my favorite part of the museum as a kid. My appreciation has changed. Thank you, Christie. This was wonderful.
Really.
And I think that we're planning a Palisades Village outing in the near future to
Mhm.
go see the new exhibit, because I haven't seen it yet. And this has been just eye-opening.
great. Well, please let me know when you're going. I'd be really happy to meet you there and give you a tour.
That'd be
Oh.
wonderful.
If you wanted to do that. Yeah, I do it all the time. And I mean, we have docents that give our normal tours, but I give them for VIPs, and you are all officially VIPs. So I'd be happy to meet with you. So,
Ooh, shall we dress up?
we can have a black
We
tie
can-
tour.
We can take pictures on the stairway. It would be
right.
really
Yes.
fun.
Yeah.
I like
The
this
Renwick
idea.
is probably the most Instagrammable of all the Smithsonian museums. It's a very photogenic backdrop. So yes, please come visit and just let me know. And I'll send you the link to the video
Oh.
that I couldn't get the sound to work on.
Good.
And you can share it with everyone.
Great.
Certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very, very much.
of course. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.